Okay, y'all, so this is going to be a summary of essentially the 10 themes of biology. You guys were going to work on a project to do your posters on the 10 themes of biology. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you, just tell you the theme, and then just sort of give you an idea on how to incorporate things together and sort of what it all means in reference to each of these 10 themes. And so hopefully by doing this, it'll give you guys an idea on what to do. So what we'll do over here is we'll say theme, and then on the opposite side of the theme, we'll just sort of, not really a description, but hints as to what to look for or how to identify that particular theme. And so our first theme, gets a little awkward over there with the smart board, doesn't it? We'll bring that down here. All right, so our first theme is biological systems, okay? So biological systems. And it's biological, I mean, we know that that is in reference to living, but it's the system idea that's more important here, is because the systems, it's the idea of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So your hint here is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So, for example, if you're talking about a hand, you've got a hand, you've got 5 fingers, well, 4 fingers and a thumb, you've got muscles, you've got bone. If you have one bone of one finger, the finger won't move. If you have 2 bones and 3 bones of that first finger, the bones still aren't going to move because they're not connected to each other. So you're going to need tendons and cartilage. Okay? Not only that, you're going to have to connect those bones to muscle. And so then you put the muscle onto the bones, and you connect those with ligaments and tendons, and then you need to put nervous system into that until it's going to be able to move and articulate. A simpler idea, a car. You can have 4 tires, but if they're not connected to anything, it's not going to move. You can have a steering wheel without the 4 tires, and you can pretend that you're driving the car. But once you take the engine and the cam and the drive shaft and all of the other components that come together for a car, you put all those individual components together, you get what you consider to be a system. And in biological systems, we talk about the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and we also want to talk about emergent properties. Emergent properties are properties that emerge once 2 components are functioning together. In other words, one component has a function on its own, the other component has a function or property on its own. But when those 2 components or multiple components are put together, a brand new property emerges. A wheel rolls. A steering wheel manipulates the wheel. An engine combusts fuel to drive the wheels. When you put all those together, your car can make all these ultimate turns, stops, brakes, stuff like that. Just like you can have a skin cell, and if you put a whole bunch of skin cells together, it's going to form skin tissue, and skin tissue protects your body from the external environment, where a single skin cell could survive, but is not going to protect you from the external environment. So, biological systems, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, emergent properties. Okay, second theme, as we're going to kind of pick up the pace because that was a little boring, the cellular basis of life. And again, the idea here is the cellular basis of life. Dr. Higgins, I can't see. Well, I'm shrinking it. Hold on. Okay, so we've got biological systems and we've got the cellular basis of life, and the hint for this is that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. That's important. That means that if I have a cell, it can reproduce to form another cell. And if I put a whole bunch of cells together, infinite cloner, put a whole bunch of cells together, suddenly, instead of having a whole bunch of cells, I now have what is considered to be tissue. Okay? So, cell over here, tissue here. But what if I take a whole bunch of different tissue types? Let's see. Make it blue. We'll say that the red is, blood vessels and tissues, and blue is going to be, muscle or whatever, and then we'll clone it again. If we take different tissue types, we can put them together, and we can, whoops, group, clone. We take different tissue types and put them together. Suddenly, instead of having one tissue, we now have an organ. Okay? So a cell, a whole bunch of cells together become a tissue, a whole bunch of tissues together become an organ. And what happens when you have a whole bunch of organs that interact with one another? And hopefully you guys are now getting my idea. Well, one of those could be the brain. One of those could be our respiratory system. One of those could be, I don't know, the circulatory system. That's kind of awkward, isn't it? Circulatory system. And if we keep putting a whole bunch of systems together like this, it almost starts to look like, and I know it's a very rough sketch, but it starts to look a little bit like an organism. Okay? And we put a whole bunch of organs together, group them together, and we know that those are forming an organism. Okay, so it lost its brain, a brainless organism. But you guys get the idea. All cells arise from pre-existing cells, and it's sort of the cellular basis of life. All right, we'll get rid of our weird organism, and we'll get rid of our cell and our tissue, and move on. Okay, cellular basis of life. Let me keep shrinking these down so we can make more room. Biological systems, cellular basis of life. All cells arise from pre-existing cells. Those are ideas. Okay? Third of our themes, form and function. And that's kind of straightforward. Form and function. You know, I like to abbreviate function like this. F of x. It's a math term. You don't have to worry about it. But that's how I like to do it, and you can use it for taking notes. But form fits function. I can flap my arms all that I want, but I will never fly because my bones are dense and the muscles attached to them are heavy, and it will never allow me to get lift. However, a bird's wings are ideally suited. They're lighter, and so allowing them to get lift. But form and function has everything to do with the number of cells, the number of muscles, the number of bones, the number of organs, the type of bone, the type of muscle, the type of cell, and the arrangement. Are they put together so that it looks like a foot? Are they put together so that it looks like a wing? Are they put together so that it looks like a leg? Form and function means the structure of that body part, the structure of that organ, gives it a specific functionality on what it's going to do. It's kind of like saying anatomy and physiology. So with form and function, you can think of the idea of number, type, or arrangement, or anatomy and physiology. And form, if you guys are digging what I'm saying, is the what, and the function is the how or why. Okay? So, we've got form and function. So that brings us to our fourth, I'm shrinking, sorry, shrinky dink. Gotta make enough room. Number, type, and arrangement, anatomy and physiology, hopefully, oh. Well, I'll shrink that and then shrink this. Oh, that's a bummer. So number, type, and arrangement, anatomy, and physiology. Fourth theme. Reproduction and inheritance. Reproduction and inheritance. Really the hint here, it's in the genes, and it's all about DNA. Well, reproduction and inheritance. It's all in the genes because we know the genes are the DNA. It contains the information on how to make us. But it also is the idea that it requires cell types to come together to reproduce. And so it's in the genes, it's in the DNA, but we know that the genes and the DNA are inside of cells. And so cells contain DNA. And more specifically, the reproductive cells, the egg, and the sperm. Okay, and so we understand, the idea of reproduction is that the sperm has to fertilize the egg, thus reproduction passes on the DNA via inheritance. So when you guys are talking about reproduction and inheritance, you're going to want to talk about something to do with the DNA, most definitely, and the types of cells that are carrying the DNA from one generation to the next. Fifth theme. Interaction with the environment. Interaction with the environment. It is impossible to survive without interacting with our environment. We do it when we're awake, we do it when we are asleep, and we interact with our environments because the environment provides us our energy. And we need energy for reproduction and inheritance. We need energy to form different parts and to function them. We need energy for our cells to be healthy. And we need energy for our biological systems to function. So we have to interact with our environment because it's our environment that has the energy that we're going to use and to pretty much live. So connect the environment with energy. In the idea of the reason why we have to is to metabolize. And hopefully you guys know what that word means. As well as perform homeostasis. Metabolize is to grow, repair, and reproduce. Homeostasis is to maintain a constant internal environment despite changing external environmental conditions. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we're interacting with our external environment, because our external environment has our energy. Okay. 6. Energy and life. Notice how this kind of stems from the previous one. Energy and life. Life forms cannot exist without the energy of life. This is the whole idea of producers, consumers, and decomposers. But what I will tell you is that in energy and life, if you can remember that energy, represented in red, is a one-way flow, and I use big E to use energy. Energy is a one-way flow, but nutrients cycle. So energy is a one-way flow, and nutrients cycle. The reason that that's important is because since energy is a one-way flow, we have to use that one-way flow to essentially recycle the nutrients, the carbon, the oxygen, all those elements and atoms that we use. Energy is a one-way flow. We cannot create more of it. We cannot destroy it. So I want you guys to remember, energy is a one-way flow, and nutrients cycle, for remembering this concept of energy and life. Producers, consumers, decomposers. Okay? 7. I know, I'm running out of room. We'll move to another slide. Regulation. I'm just going to say thermostat. Okay, regulation. How does our body adapt to changes from the environment? And how do we maintain an internal environment? Okay, so once again, a thermostat, but how do we deal with environmental changes? Okay, that's the concept here. So what I'm about to do is sort of do the next slide, and I'm just going to pretend that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. We were on number 8. This was theme. This was hint. Adaptation and evolution. So adaptation and evolution. Because our environment changes, so must we. And it's not, and what, it's the question is what is changing? And it's the information, the instructions, it's the DNA. So again, that link to the environment. Adaptation and evolution simply means some organisms are going to have certain special types of DNA that have been changed by the environment, allowing them to survive better in that environment compared to other environments. Okay? Adaptation and evolution. We'll talk about Charles Darwin, which is something that you'll want to mention. And just kind of talk about the basic ideas of what adaptation means and change over time. And there's the pictures of the mantids in your book, and the bird eating the weird bugs, okay? Now, these last two are kind of no-brainers, okay? Biology and society. Okay, all that I have to say here is prescription. That's the prescription sign. We can say nature reserves. We can say medicine, doctors, biology and society. It is impossible for us to not interact with our environment. It is impossible for biology not to affect the society that we live in. It is driven by biology. All the science and all the research, we're trying to function on us, biology and society. So definitely look into the medical type situations and really just why we need society. Think about probably the biggest thing, food. All about biology. Okay, and finally our last theme has to do with scientific inquiry. And those of you who are talking about scientific inquiry, this is what you should focus on, which is actually in the second chapter. But what scientific inquiry means is that by our nature, humans are curious about the world around us. And so we are constantly asking questions on how we function in our society, why things change over time. We're asking questions like, how do we change our internal body? How do we respond to the environment? How do we obtain energy? What happens when something changes in the environment? How do we pass on the instructions to live within this environment? And do these instructions determine our form and our function? We all know that it's based on cells, and the cell itself is one of the simplest biological systems that there are. So these are the main themes that we're going to see all throughout the year. I hope that this helped.